Well, it's been almost 20 years since I bought my 2001 Trans Am WS6. It was a stock 6-speed manual car with only 12,000 miles back then and still under factory warranty, but as soon as that ran out, the mods started to pour in. I've done it all to my Trans Am and it's been through probably 10 different setups, gigantic camshafts, ported heads, intakes, nitrous, converting the manual to a big stall automatic with a trans brake, multiple different turbo systems, and everything in between, but no matter what, the theme was always the same. A built car that was fast, but that operated just as it did from the factory under normal driving conditions. I wanted a full interior car that retained all factory options, including functioning air conditioning, and I was never really into gutted tin cans you couldn't enjoy on the street, so I built myself a legit street car. A car that drives to the track in comfort, runs nines, and simply drives home with no fuss. My Trans Am is the reason I started my YouTube channel, the inspiration for the channel name, and much more. I've owned it for over half my life and I'll never sell it, but I'm not happy to admit that I've neglected the car over the last 4 years. I've been really busy with other cars, YouTube, and family, and I don't drive it much, and the issues have been piling up, and I haven't addressed any of them, so it's time to diagnose some really weird ones, fix the car, make it faster, and give the car a refresh that'll make it even more of a legit street car. Oh, and I'm happy to announce that we finally have Trans Am merch. So we have vinyl stickers, vinyl posters. You can hang these up in your garage and get them dirty and wipe them clean. And of course, we have Trans Am t-shirts. And we're running a sale right now, so check out the link down below. All right, so let's get right into these issues. We have a few really weird ones. Battery's getting a little low. Right there. You see that puff of blue smoke? That is oil. And I know what you're thinking, it's just the valve stem seals or something like that. No, this engine is practically brand new. It probably has 1,500 miles on it. And this only happens if I let the engine warm up completely. It will not happen at cold start. So if I let it warm up to full operating temperature and then restart it immediately, you get no smoke at all. At cold startup, no smoke at all. You have to let it warm up all the way and then let it cool down for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then when you restart it, you get your oil. If you let it cool all the way back down, you get no puff of smoke at all. It's very strange. Also, we have a ton of play in the steering. I know it's kind of hard to tell right now. I'm just moving the steering wheel back and forth, but there's a couple inches in both direction that does nothing. Also, the engine is not running as smooth as it did. I know it's, again, hard to tell for you guys on camera, but I know this car very, very well, and there's something going on here. When I went to go work on the Fox Body Mustang in the empty parking lot, I got into boost on the highway and it was just braking up like crazy, so I just let out of it. So something's going on with the engine now too, and that's a pretty new one. So I'm thinking the oil puffing out of the exhaust is most likely the turbocharger. This is a comp turbo that's been on this car for about 12 years and it's never been rebuilt. It's an excellent turbocharger, it makes a ton of power, and it's been on here for like about 20,000 miles of 900 wheel horsepower. So I think that's it. We're definitely going to take the downpipe off and the entire turbo in this video. But one of the biggest problems with this car and one of the biggest mystery problems is a nasty engine oil leak. So I rebuilt this engine about 4 years ago, or only about 1,500 miles ago, all new gaskets. I put this together myself. I've rebuilt many LS engines and it's got a very weird oil leak that I can't really figure out. It seems to be coming from the perimeter of the oil pan. There's no engine oil at all on the engine block. And the only thing we did differently from the last setup was weld this return oil bung right here. So we had to heat up the aluminum and do a bunch of aluminum welding. And this is the only area that doesn't leak right there. And I know you're thinking it probably needs a new gasket, but I put a new gasket in, it's torqued properly, I've retorqued it, and it just leaks in every single spot around there except where we welded. So I'd also thought maybe this was a rear main seal, even though that wouldn't explain the oil in the front. But I popped a little inspection cover off and it's bone dry in here. The TA also has a power steering leak from the rack, so it needs a new rack. But I want to figure out this oil leak, so let's get to work. Let's spray this clean. I think the last time I really looked at this was probably 3 years ago, so this is 3 years worth of oil and gunk. And this is engine oil too, it's just blowing on the trans pan. And just like that, it's fixed. Look at how pretty and clean. So right now, I want to see if we can fix the misfiring engine and get back into boost. So if we fix that, we'll go for a test drive, and then that'll hopefully make this leak again, and we can kind of look at it together and see if we can see where it's coming from. All right, so I want to go after ignition here for this breaking up. That is my sneaky suspicion. I haven't replaced the spark plugs in a long time, and it's just been kind of moved around the shop a lot, so it could be fouled out. All right, so we'll remove the strut tower brace. Let's get a plug out. All right, what do we have? They're not the cleanest plugs. I definitely think these are fouled out, and I would typically replace these about every 5,000 miles just to be safe, but I think we're gonna go ahead and swap these out. And I don't believe I cracked this taking it out. It came out really nice, but this could cause a misfire too. They actually have the spark plugs in stock at the auto parts store. And any chance I get to use my Smoosat SA3, I'm taking it. This thing is so fast. This thing's an absolute beast. It goes over 15 miles an hour. It has 20 miles of range and uses an automotive grade battery that charges quickly and powers a 350 watt brushless hub motor in the rear. This thing is rear wheel drive like the Trans Am, does a mean burnout, and pops a better wheelie than my car. And I'm gonna leave you a special Amazon link down below and a coupon code that's gonna get you a total of $100 off. Now, I just rode the Warped Perception jet-powered scooter, and it was pretty wild, but this one has a super slick LED display and 3 different drive modes. I always keep it in super fast mode, of course, but this scooter has the brakes to back it up. It has a bright LED headlight for riding at night and a flashing brake light, and this scooter even has cruise control. My favorite part is the SA3 is super light and it folds, so it's easy to transport in your car. And my wife has one, I have one, and there's a kid's version for the little one, so of course we had to get them one too. And it comes in a few different cool colors.
Woo! These are fun! We gotta take these to the track.
These Smoosat scooters are so much fun to drive and very useful for local commuting. So I'm gonna leave the kids version and the SA3 linked down below. Don't forget to use the special link and the coupon code to get yourself $100 off. And with that, let's go get some Trans Am spark plugs. All right, so I got all the old plugs out and they pretty much all look the same. They do have some oil on them, and I believe that is from the leaking turbo, I hope. It better not be this engine. But yeah, they're generally just kind of fouled out, and this is because I don't really drive this car anymore. And these are 2-step colder spark plugs. So when you go with colder spark plugs, that's to reduce your chance of detonation when you're running higher boost pressures. But it also isn't as efficient as a hotter spark plug. It's going to be a less efficient burn. So if you're just putzing around, idling the car a bunch in the winter, moving it from that end of the shop to here a million times, you could foul out spark plugs. So anyway, we have the new ones right here. I always order 9 just in case I drop one and break it. The last one we got to get from the bottom though. The spark plugs on this car are pretty easy because I'm still retaining factory exhaust manifolds. So that is a C6 Corvette exhaust manifold, and this is a 6-liter truck manifold flipped around. This turbo kit has held up really nicely. I had turbo manifolds on a kit before this, and they would always crack. It was a big pain in the butt. It would melt spark plug wires, but this has just been great, and it's been on the car for over a decade. No issues whatsoever. It's very basic. It just works. All right, here we go. Last one. Yep. Pretty much exactly the same as the other ones. Oh, and it is the next day, and with the Trans Am just sitting on the lift, we have no oil leaks at all. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I put these plugs in, so let's just check the gap on the old ones. I don't remember what I set these at, so that's like 25 thousandths. I think that's about right. If I remember correctly, these 2-step colder ones are set right at 25 thousandths, which is good. You want kind of a tighter gap on a higher boost engine because you can experience the spark actually being blown out if it's too large of a gap. So some factory gaps could be 40 thousandths, 50 thousandths, something like that. And typically that's too much. Okay, all 8 spark plugs have been replaced. This took me about 30 minutes. It's just really difficult to film anything for you guys because there are very tight quarters, but you can just imagine the spark plugs going in and then snapping the wires on. So with that, let's fire this thing up. Ooh, that battery is low. It is low. Check this out though. So this thing's been sitting overnight. No smoke out of the exhaust at all. That issue is just so specific. It will only smoke if it's warm, but not all the way warm. You gotta let it sit for a little while. But anyway, she is back up and running. Oh yeah, that is smooth. That is very smooth. Yes, that was definitely it. The spark plugs were just all a little fouled out, causing this thing just to have a little bit of a shake and break up under boost. Before we go ahead and remove the turbo, let's go have some fun. So I actually tuned the Trans Am, and it still retains closed loop functionality, so the O2 sensors will still adjust. We're at a perfect 1 lambda right now, and at wide open throttle I have it going down to about 0.78, which if I remember correctly translates to about a high 10 or low 11 AFR. I don't really remember. I started tuning using Lambda, and it's just much easier if you're using blended fuels. Speaking of blended fuels, this car uses methanol injection. It's a dual nozzle kit. It'll replace about 25% of the fueling needs. So without it, the engine would probably melt down. And normally I send out the methanol injection pump every other year to get rebuilt, just so we're 100% that it works. It's been about 4 or 5 years, so I have it limited to about 8 PSI of boost here, some different ramp in stages, just so we have some sort of chance of traction. But the way I have the tune set up is it's just on 93 octane without any meth injection up to about 10 PSI, so we're safe in here, and the car is still pretty fast. This is probably about 650 wheel horsepower. If we bump it up to 20 PSI, that's when it hits its 900-ish wheel. Wow, $5.40 a gallon for premium. It's coming down. I mean, I'm not happy about paying $5.40 for a gallon of gas, but it's better than like the $7 a gallon, literally for premium, that it was in Chicago. Stuff's getting out of control, people. This has got to be the best sounding car I have. The turbo just takes over, and with the boost activated cutout, it just dumps right off the turbo. So you get 100% turbo noise. The blow-off valve is crazy loud. This is so much fun. I love this car, and it's just a shame I haven't been driving it much lately. But after we do our little series here on the Trans Am version 2, if you will, I'm driving this thing much more. CTS V-Wagon, yes. Dude, this is insane. I haven't even pulled out yet. We got an E63 wagon. CTS V-Wagon, E63 wagon. What is going on? Where is my E55 wagon when you need it? It's got a Rentec badge on the back too. Oh, man. You know, I gotta say, when you don't drive a fast car for a long time and then you drive it again, it feels like 10 times faster. It's just too easy. It's just too easy. Now that we have properly warmed up this engine, let's go take the turbo off and see what's wrong with it. Okay, this is seriously getting weird with the wagons. It's like 2 minutes later, and we have an RS6 wagon as well, so that's kind of cool. Out of the wagons we just saw, CTS V-Wagon, an E63 wagon, and the RS6 there, which one would you rather have? I am seriously torn between the Mercedes and the Cadillac. I really like those. Not that the RS6 is bad either.
There was no traction at all.
No.
It was just straight spin up.
Just half throttle, the lowest boost setting. This is Peter's first ride in the Trans Am. He's like, wait a minute, wait, Alex. I was just about to pull it in to take the turbo off. He's like, but I've never been in a ride in the Trans Am. I'm like,
all right, Max gets a ride and I know.
I'm like, all right, let's go.
You reluctantly agree.
Yeah. I was like, all right, Peter, fine. I'll do it for you.
What a chore.
Yeah.
Oh man!
It literally
That's
never
a
hooked.
Riot, yeah.
And that was half throttle. Like, it's just wild.
It wasn't even like, oh, it's getting into boost, we're gonna have traction, and then boost will hit. Like, it was just 0 and then
Yeah.
a million.
And then with the torque converter, it's like a snowmobile. It's like there's no speed. It's just, you know, it's just wah.
Oh, man, that's so good. No wonder you're so happy when you drive this when it's working.
We just took pictures for the new Trans Am shirts, and Peter was like, "Why are you so happy?" And I'm like, "Trans Am. I love my Trans Am." With this car, you got to make sure you're going perfectly straight. You can't punch it on a turn at all. It's gonna straighten up, Peter. It's gonna straighten up and straight. Oh, that was 6 PSI. I love it. And this is what I'm talking about for a legit street car. Over 70 miles an hour with the automatic. It's a lock-up torque converter. We're only at 2,000 RPM, so I've measured about 23 miles per gallon just cruising on the highway. All right, I've moved the TA over to a spot where it can hang out for a few weeks while we wait for this turbo to be rebuilt. And I just found out that Comp has not only the oilless turbo, but a waterless turbo as well. It's an air-cooled turbo. It's kind of crazy. I'm hoping they have one this big because I want to show you guys that technology and learn a little bit more about it myself. But anyway, we got kind of a big mess. That is a 6-bolt Eclipse motor that I picked up from the boneyard that we're going to be building. But for now, the engine has been cooling off with a fan, actually the turbo more importantly, so let's get it out of there. All right, this is so weird. I haven't taken the turbo off of this car in so long that I've kind of forgotten how to do it. So I used to work on this car so much. It's been through so many setups. I've had every nut and bolt out of this thing that I had everything memorized. Like everything just went in order. I could probably get this thing out in like 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, I know I'm having an air filter problem. This is coming apart, so we'll have to fix that too. Oh, I have no idea how I got this turbo blanket off. Oh, get out of here. Awesome turbo blanket. Woo! It's seen better days. It's coming apart finally. I think this thing's been on there for about 10 years. I say overall, everything is pretty well tested on this turbo system. Okay, there we go. So yeah, this is from the fans. This thing was right up against the fans, so kind of cut into that, I guess. But this guy has worked though. It has worked a very, very long time. Very nice piece. Yeah, you can see some of the insulation is coming apart there, but it's still probably good. I could throw that thing right back on the new turbo if it fits. I'm gonna go ahead and use this as an example because sometimes I hear in the comments section, people are like, oh, you can only do that because you have a lift. No, things are easier when you have a lift. Like getting to this downpipe nut would be much easier on a lift, but you can do it on the floor. It just takes a little bit longer. So some people in the comments are a little ridiculous. I'll do like a valve cover, but because it's racked, because I did brakes or something, they're like, you did it all because of the lift. You can work on the floor too, people. I did it for many, many years. With that bottom nut off, we should be able to get this V-band clamp out of the way. Well, it's been on here for a while, so it's gonna be kind of stuck. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's kind of move this over. There we go. So we can leave the wideband sensor in there. All of the wastegate stuff and the boost activated cutout, everything is before the turbo. So all we have to do is get to those flange bolts there. And we should probably disconnect the cold side too. You just have one clamp right here. And we can kind of just pull that down. Like I said, this guy spins really nice. I don't see any shaft play at all. That's crazy. While we're still up here, let's loosen up the feed. And we shouldn't get any oil out of this one. It's gonna be the return. We're gonna probably lose a little on the ground. Yeah, we're good. All right, so here is our oil return. And I cannot wait to get rid of this going with the oilless turbo. Just all these oil lines, they've just been kind of a pain in the butt. I've never really had any oil burning issues with this setup outside of what you're seeing now, but nothing because we have a bad drain, even though this isn't in the best spot. This is just a gravity drain. There's no scavenger pump or anything. And although the difference in height between this and where it ends up in the oil pan isn't massive, it just needs to be above where it enters the oil pan for it to drain. And this hose is going to be a pain in the butt. All right, so I have loosened up all 4 bolts here, and this turbo is held onto the flange with no gasket, but with a high temperature RTV, so it's gonna be kind of stuck on there. There we go, just gonna kind of loosen it up. The rear bolts go in through the top like this, and then there's a nut on the bottom. Okay, now, if I did everything correctly, this turbo should simply just come out. I don't remember if I had to take this hose out or anything. I think I could just sneak this old guy out. I hope so. Come on, baby. Done so well for me. Little turbo. Don't break the fan on the way out. There we go. Okay. Oh, she's heavy. So this is still a T4 flange turbo. I'm not running a T6. A lot of big V8 guys, this is a 6 liter, will run a much larger turbo, like physically looks larger. So this is still an 88 millimeter, which when people use those terms, you really gotta ask more questions because not all 88s or 78s or whatever are all the same. This has an 88 millimeter compressor wheel and a 92 millimeter turbine wheel back here. So anyway, let's take a look at what we got. All right, so here we have it. Billet compressor wheel, of course, no shaft play whatsoever. This is where it gets fed its exhaust, and this is just from the return. Kind of spilled on there when I was taking it out. But I'm not seeing anything here. I was kind of hoping to see an oil leak here, but everything is perfect. Now, because it's very intermittent and it's just a little plume of smoke, it could be intermittent, and maybe that's why we're not seeing anything right now with the turbo. I'm not really sure. But if I was just looking at this, not knowing there was any issue, I'd say this turbo is perfectly fine. And there's our little oil leak right there. It's only at the very front of the oil pan, so it's not even near the rear main seal. And it's coming just from the perimeter of the oil pan. So at this point, I do think I'm gonna replace that oil pan and a new gasket. I'm gonna be getting rid of that large fitting in the front anyway. Right now, I'm just showing you that the steering linkage and the U-joint are good. I do believe all of the play is in the rack and pinion, and it's leaking anyway. So we'll put a new rack in here, get an alignment, and hopefully that will fix that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little perplexed at what that puff of smoke could be. So just to give you all of the context, because I'm hoping you guys can comment down below on what you think the issue is. Now, it started directly after we rebuilt the engine the last time. So I was starting to get some glitter in the oil and the bearings were toasted. And so we rebuilt the entire engine, and I did not replace the turbo at the same time. So when it started happening, my original thought was that maybe some of the little pieces of metal glitter got into the turbo and messed it up, and that's why we're getting that blue puff of smoke. I'm gonna send the turbo out regardless. We have it out, and Comp has a lot newer technology that they're gonna stick in the new one. So that's happening no matter what. But if that does not fix it, what in the engine could cause this issue? So just to recap, the car can sit for a whole year. Doesn't really matter. You start it up, no puff of smoke whatsoever. So you typically see an issue with valve seals if you let it sit overnight or for a week and then it puffs smoke. So I don't think it's that. Also, if it's fully warmed up and you shut it off 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, it doesn't puff the smoke. It has this weird sweet spot of about 15 to 20 minutes. Then you start it up and it puffs the smoke out. So if you let the thing just cool down fully and then start it up like 3 hours later, no smoke whatsoever. It's gotta be in this tiny little window of time. It's very, very strange. I spoke with the engine builder right after I put this thing together like 4 or 5 years ago. They'd never heard of this. I'd never heard of it. All my mechanic friends had never heard of this. So let me know in the comments section down below what you guys think the issue is. And with that, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I really hope you love the return of the Trans Am as much as I do. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the link down below for the Trans Am merch. There's gonna be a discount for a limited time. And also, check out the link for the scooters. Those things are phenomenal. With that, have an awesome day. I'll see you all in the next video.